It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all here tonight to Adonis and Fathom's Revenue Cycle Symposium. My name is Akash Magoon. I am the co-founder and the CEO of Adonis, a company that I started with my brother, and we're excited to co-host this event with Fathom tonight. Tonight, we're going to explore how we can leverage AI and integrate that into revenue cycle management to unlock incredible efficiencies, improve outcomes, and ultimately elevate the way that providers run businesses so that we can allow them to deliver the highest form of patient care. This event is much more than just a gathering. It's an opportunity for us to exchange ideas, share insights, and build connections that will help us drive forward as leaders in the space. The fact that we have such a distinguished group of executives tonight really speaks to the volumes of all that we have in terms of the shared vision towards the future of revenue cycle. I encourage each one of you to take full advantage of the conversations, collaborations, and opportunities ahead of us. Our shared expertise and passion for progress are what will pave the way for the breakthroughs that we're all working towards. I also wanted to extend a brief thank you to the Fathom team who partnered with us to make this event possible tonight, and for all the speakers for sharing a little bit of wisdom with us on what they're working on and what they're excited about. Thank you once again for being here, and I'd like to invite Doug, who will be moderating the first panel here.
We're here to talk about AI and revenue cycle. That field is quickly evolving, as everyone probably here is well familiar with. The folks here that you're graced with their expertise and insights, I can go one by one and introduce them. Blake, I'm going to skip you because my note cards, but I'll come back to you. Neil Lezarago is the Executive Vice President at ApolloMD. It's one of the largest emergency medicine staffing physician firms in the nation. They partner with, I believe, over 160, 140 hospitals across 16 states and 2,500 physicians right now and growing. One thing that we'll talk about in the panel is their business model is also unique, where they also offer the revenue cycle services to groups outside of just staffing their emergency medicine departments. And next is, and thank you for joining us, Neil. Next is Dr. Jacques Jospitre. He's the founder of a company called SohoMD. That is a behavioral health, mental health practice offering comprehensive psychiatric and therapeutic services through virtual care delivery. His group is over 130 and growing, practicing providers based in New York City. And his group is rapidly thinking about advancing technology and adopting it to advance their growth. Next up is Travis Otto. He's the Director of Finance at Valley Orthopedics. They're based in the greater Chicago area. They've been around for quite a while, 43 years, I believe. And serving the greater Chicago area through 8 outpatient facilities, as well as physicians, staffed across a couple of hospitals there. And last but not least,
I'm just the filler guy.
Yeah. Caroline messed up she changed up the seating pattern. So she didn't mess it up. I gave her free realm. And Blake Madden, editor, founder of a company called Hospitalogy. That is a newsletter. It's widely read across the healthcare space. He's been at it for quite a while, and former consultant, so comes in with kind of in-depth analysis, is able to kind of take more of a business mind around how folks are thinking about healthcare. And as we'll get into in the conversations, can pull in a couple of insights that he's had out of recent conversations that could be interesting for us to think about as a group. So thanks for joining.
Yeah.
All right, maybe to kick it off, why don't we go around the horn, talk about pain points, challenges. I opened it up, AI, payers are adopting it, providers are adopting it, a lot of folks are talking about it, but at the root cause of it, it's all about the pain points and challenges and use cases that you guys are identifying. So maybe we'll kick it off, and Jock, if you want to kick us off on that.
So in terms of our company, in terms of clinical excellence, that was one thing, I was well trained in. It was one thing that we developed in our team. And we had that in terms of really positioning ourselves in the marketplace as far as really doing great clinical work. In terms of our growth, the ability to get paid for that great work was essential, and it became a real sticking point for us where our ability to really develop a great team around the RCM work was challenging. And then that had a downward effect to impact our ability in terms of cash flow, in terms of growth. And so that's definitely been a big issue as far as the quality of work we were doing on RCM.
For my team, so we have a team of about 20 revenue cycle staff members, and for us, it was really a lot about prioritization and just sorting through mass amounts of data and really gleaning insights. Our teams, we found, were either focusing on the wrong parts of the business or the wrong, in terms of claims, maybe subset of claims being worked, and then also maybe working them improperly or ineffectively. And so for us, it was a lot about just trying to understand, what is the effectiveness of the work that we're doing, and then being able to react and adapt to changes, and being really on the front lines and understanding those changes as they came.
We're about 4 million patients a year in totality. So it's very, very difficult to keep your eye on every single ball that's being thrown at us from all the different payers. And we're geographically challenged as well because we're in 16 different states. They all run very differently. It would be nice if it was all cohesive and all the Blues acted the same way and United acted the same way, but that's just not what happens. So one of our biggest pain points is really identifying quickly where bad payer behavior is occurring, and it changes from one day to the next. So, we're in the bottom of the ninth, we're playing by all the rules, and then Blue changes the rules up. And we just figured out the rules from yesterday's game, and now we have new rules. And it's very important for us to understand those changes immediately as they're occurring, because when you're processing 4 million patient visits a year, that adds up very quickly. So where we would like to really pull technology into the revenue cycle is identifying payer behaviors and being able to then turn those into resolutions very quickly. That's our biggest one.
Yeah, I'll echo that, and then I'll kind of take more of a broad kind of perspective around this. Just with like the discourse last year around what happened kind of later in the year, there's been a lot of pressure on payers and kind of just denials, and United Health's been in the news a lot for various things, AI-driven denials and those sorts of things. So I think that from a consumer perspective, there's a big push for just transparency around billing and in those sorts of things. And so I think that'll be a big point of emphasis for the current administration too, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I mean, one of the common themes across all three of your answers, and Blake, yours as well, is like what we hear commonly is data divides, right? In terms of like, there's so much data and there's so much changing data, to your point, around payer policy guidelines, et cetera, that, AI, machine learning is uniquely suited for that in a way that Excel is not, in a way, and Teams are not, because it takes a lot of time to sift through that information. So how are you guys thinking about bridging that data divide with AI, machine learning, or the available partners out there in the market?
I think to Neil, your comment around just like reacting quickly to behavior. In the old world, our teams, that information was sort of managed as like on an individual basis, someone on the team keeping like a Google sheet that had like all of the, cheats around how a payer would, behave around a certain, set of procedures, for example. And so we're using technology now to analyze trends and understand. I think, within our EHR, we have some of the rules that are, programmatic and set to those payer behaviors, but they're set. There's a delay there where those rules are established, maybe 3-6 months later. And so there could already be claims being denied for any number of issues. And so we're trying to use technology to really analyze those trends and get ahead of it.
And just to piggyback on that, the importance of identifying your denial trends quickly is also for timely filing, because you could imagine how much revenue you lose to timely filing. And it's like death by 100 cuts when you're looking at so much data and you come to realize, oh, these were denied X weeks ago, and now it's too late for me to even recon these or call the payer because they're going to ask me, well, why are you calling me now? This was denied 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago. So I think increasing, revenue and decreasing write-offs is one of our biggest goals for this year, and utilizing technology, AI, machine learning, robotics to help us do that. Because humans can only move so fast and they can only process information so quickly.
Yeah, just to add to that, the trends, the patterns, so that you can aggregate the charts that are related to the issue and be able to quickly assemble that to get it to the payers, because oftentimes they want details. So you might find it in one setting, but you want to see it across your whole caseload to be able to get that reimbursement.
Good. Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, data in general, like folks I've talked to, the more data accessibility you have, like the more access you have to, insights around, hey, these types of denials get the percentage of, whatever takes longer to kind of process, or those sorts of things. And then also with more real-time data, like the more flexibility you have around like your business model in general on the provider side.
No, that makes sense. And Blake, I know you were just at Vive. What were the common themes? I looked at the agenda. We weren't able to make it. Everything was AI. Right?
Yeah,
so like, how should we interpret that? What were people excited by? What was your take?
Yeah, so Vive and health is always like, what's the flashiest thing? What's kind of the flavor of the month? And so you kind of like visualize the Oprah meme that's like, you get an agentic AI, you get an agentic AI. It seemed like, and so it's really interesting because agentic AI is really, really cool and cutting edge. And so a lot of founders I talked to were all talking about, hey, I'm developing this agent for this use case, and here's why it's different. Then I would have the next conversation 30 minutes later, and it's like, hey, I'm developing an agent for this exact same use case, and here's why it's different. And so it's really, really cool because agentic AI is unlocking things, and the thing about it is, agents don't get tired and they can do repetitive tasks, and it's kind of the action layer we've needed on top of the data layer. So thinking things like call centers and those sorts of things. But the thing I'm worried about is kind of like the longevity of like the commercialization process of like these businesses. It's like, how many will survive? Will they get absorbed? Are they ultimately going to be features? Those sorts of things. So lots of exciting things coming out of Vive, but also longevity is what I'm worried about.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And like all three of you it's fairly unique, I think, is like physician owned and physician led. Right? Is it coming up in conversations? Tennille, like I know like we talked about it today, but so maybe you could go first.
Our exec team is provider based, is very interested in us embracing AI. It's actually one of the initiatives that our CEO is pushing right now. So one of our first AI agent initiatives is actually set to go live on March 1st, and we're partnering with Adonis on this, and we're going to use a very small case study of our Optum veterans claims. So recently, they've changed the rules, and they're requiring, surprise, they're requiring referral numbers for emergency room visits for the veterans if they have Optum VA. So we have the challenge of figuring out if they're Optum VA or if they're traditional veterans administration claims, and then we are dependent on the hospital to initiate the VA request for the referral number. They have to do that within 72 hours. And then we get data without the referral number, so our claims are going to be denied. So we have 3 FTEs who currently are calling every day on these claims, and that takes a lot of time. So we've actually, we're in testing phase now, and it's amazing how quickly we've been able to get this up and running. But the AI agents have been taught the script. They take the data and bring it back to us, and then through automation, we're going to put it into the claim itself and then redrop the claim out. So essentially, we're probably not going to be at 0 FTEs for this because you still need some support for your outliers and your exceptions. But the anticipation is we can go from 3 to 1. right? And then the AI agents are doing most of the work. And then just only the exceptions are being handled by an FTE. So, and I have like visions of grandeur on what else we can do with these AI agents, but we're going to start small and see how that goes. But so far, it's been going very well.
We also share visions of grandeur.
And I'll add to that on that point. AI in RCM and RCM in general is an area where people want to like test as like an initial use case for AI because there is an immediate ROI component. So it's very easy to say, like, I know of several companies that are like, hey, work with us and we'll work with you on a contingency basis where, you know, we'll analyze this long tail of claims and do that for you. And, you know, however many X discharges, we'll give you X number of dollars and take a piece of that. So it's like very synergistic to invest in this area.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, piggybacking on both comments, it's essential in terms of just figuring out ways to decrease the cost of just running the business. So that's a real key part, and in decreasing the risk as you scale up, right? Because as you scale and you get more complexity in your system, you have more people that you need to train, and all these modifications, you have to do it across a larger workforce. It's harder to do it, and so having these agents that can implement that, it's a huge return on investment.
I think one of the interesting components that I think a lot of you guys share too is just, you know, in private practice for us, we have one of our challenges has always been creating automation just because of the nature of the clinicians and the, you know, doctors' practices operating a little bit differently. And so I think with AI, it's sort of opened the door for interpretation of information that's not, you know, packaged perfectly all the time. And so I think that's going to be really interesting in healthcare and private practice, especially just because of the nature of, you know, clinicians functioning a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, that's well understood. It makes sense, Travis. For everyone's reference, Travis and Tennille are both on Athena Health, Athena Collector, which is the billing platform, and Travis is on the EHR as well. And then Jock is on AdvancedMD, right? So as you look across the healthcare landscape with AI agents, there's been talks that have been coming up with our like prospect conversations recently and client conversations around how important is the underlying tech stack when you're thinking about AI in the future. How are you guys thinking about, one, the gaps potentially that you're trying to solve for with Athena Health, Travis and Tennille, and AdvancedMD, Jock, and then how you're thinking about, you know, future-proofing your business over the next 36 months, you know, with that in mind?
Yeah, I can start. I think that the gaps for us is the complexity of using the EHR. So we have an enterprise EHR, which has very robust, lots of functionality, but getting people trained to use it and then getting them to be experts in it, there's a learning curve. And so leveraging an agent, that becomes the interface that we can now get rid of some of that complexity and really help us focus on the key drivers to our growth, to our profitability, and take away some of that unnecessary part. So we see it as really being impactful for us.
Yeah, I was just, I guess I'll take a slightly different approach to the question too. Like I was joking with these guys earlier with Athena Health. Like we recently moved to Athena Health about 2 years ago, and migrating an EHR for our practice was extremely challenging. We had, you know, especially with our RCM team, we had folks that had been doing a specific job for 10 plus years. And so to learn a completely new system really was disruptive to our business. And so, I mean, I've even been using AI to just teach myself Athena Health. Like I'll use Chat GPT to just prompt it, like, how should I do this? Because the old world was like watching training videos and downloading PDFs and trying to find the answers to the specific questions that you had. So I mean, I see so many applications across the board.
We've been on Athena Health for 9 years, and I'm still not an expert at it. it's a very robust system, and for our model, it doesn't allow the transparency that we need from a reporting perspective, an analysis perspective, and like data retrieval perspective that we need for the amount of data that we have flushing through the platform. So from a technology filling in the gap, it's really, we need intelligence first to understand what's happening in our accounts receivable and where our inventory is sitting and why it's sitting there. And then layering on top the AI and the robotics to then deploy resolution actions on top of the intelligence in a meaningful way. We're mostly emergency medicine, and we're not private practice, obviously. So we don't really know our patients on a very personal level like a private practice would, but patient satisfaction is extremely important to us. We're like an extension of the physician care, of the clinical care. Patients sometimes don't remember exactly who saw them in the ED, but they'll remember us when we bill them incorrectly. Or, so we have to try to get it right before we engage patient. And that's really where we want to try to establish that connection with the AI and technology.
Thanks, Danielle. Danielle, I wanted to kick it to you around ApolloMD's business model and also open it up. Jock, you're growing SohoMD right now. And so I think this question also, aligns really nicely with your current mission right now. And one is like, how important is like the tech stack? Reason why Tennille, because they're going out and actively selling into both hospital and health systems, as well as, selling their revenue cycle expertise and services. And Jock, as you're looking to grow the business and you're talking to the market, I'm just wondering, like, less about just AI. It's more around like how you're thinking holistically around your vendors and, procurement and like thinking about like how 1 + 1 equals hopefully 3 or more than 2.
Yeah, totally. For us, one of the key factors we've looked for our tech stack is to have an open API, because the goal is to have a glue that we can take those open APIs and turn it into a unified experience for both our providers and for our patients. So that's been the key part of it. But looking at working with partners where they're leveraging AI in an efficient way in their domain. So we want to, also develop some custom AI solutions, but we want to focus in on the areas that we feel we're experts in, and then let our partners work with the AI in their, domains. And then the combination gives us a very cost-effective, efficient, high-quality solution for both the patients and for providers.
Well, I think in our RCM model, so the RCM model that we have is where we are not staffing or employing the providers that are actually in the health systems. We are just doing the billing for them. So all the clinical oversight is not ApolloMD's responsibility, but the billing and revenue and reimbursement is. And one of the key factors that we would like to use tech in that relationship is to reduce the cost to collect, because that's a driving factor. And when you're trying to actually sell that product, that service to a provider group, it always comes down to cost to collect. So every time we can shave off 50 cents a patient to collect 75 cents, $1, it's all adding up. And we really do see that AI and technology is going to be able to kind of get us to a more appealing cost to collect when we go out to market to sell this service.
Thanks, Danielle. And Tennille, you're partnered with both Fathom and Adonis, which is part of the tech stack that goes to market.
Yes.
Travis, non-healthcare background when you came in, corporate finance, used to more or less big data and using it to your advantage. But like what's been the biggest transition from coming from corporate finance to coming to, healthcare at Fox Valley?
I would say, the biggest challenge for me was learning just insurance behavior, at least at a level that I could. It really is a black hole, I think, unless you've been in the business for your entire career. And so when I joined the practice, it was certainly I had to get up to speed quickly. One of the things that I've noticed just over time is like the functions within my team were so siloed. And so we had so many people that did very specific tasks. And, they were great at them and they knew, specific payers and how they would be, reacting or behaving. And so for me, it was just really about how can we start to leverage technology to bring more of that, centralize more of that knowledge base really, and start to bring people more, level them up to see things more holistically, and trust the technology to do some of the work that they had been, doing for so long. And that really is a behavioral shift and was very challenging just on a personal basis with a lot of team members, is to just get them to feel confident in the technology and make that shift.
Jacques, running the practice, CEO, also physician. But how do you bridge the divide between the practicing physician part, the CEO? I imagine the switching costs, mount up.
Yeah, no, it does. I think what I love about it is I think about how to do clinical work as an organization versus as an individual, and really coming up with systems where the quality is kind of engineered into how we run the company. So for me, it's definitely been, quite a labor of love for a long time. But I think that's what corporate medicine should do, right? It's how do you orchestrate it so people work less, deliver better care, and it's just done effectively and efficiently. So it's been pretty nice.
All right, Blake, I was going to talk to you about AI agents, but we already talked about that a little bit.
Going.
And you brought up the administration, which is interesting, right? I wasn't planning to go there, but maybe we shall. But I mean, how are you thinking about it? From more of kind of like a outsider with an inside door, view in terms of you're hearing how people are talking about these things, and there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of potential movement, a lot of Wall Street Journal articles. How should provider groups and hospital and health systems be thinking about the potential upcoming changes and how to maybe plan for those, even if they aren't sure that they're actually going to happen?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'll just say in the past, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so the new administration has taken over and they've put out 2 or 3 executive orders on healthcare immediately. I think we are all probably familiar with the kind of, clown fiesta that is RFK and Make America Healthy Again and all those sorts of things. But interestingly, politics aside, within that, they have a lot of points around transparency and open source data and those sorts of things. And so I think in general, we're going to see transparency be a major theme. And so the next executive order that came out maybe 2 or 3 days ago was around transparency and coverage. So Trump, and whenever it was, enacted that initially around, I think it was 300 shoppable services, good faith estimates. And now it's hey, you need to let the consumers know exactly how much they're going to be paying over 500 common procedures. And it's kind of he thinks it's going to be free market. So consumers will potentially shop more for their MRI or those sorts of things. But also, that creates a huge headache on the back end for everyone else where it's okay, how are we do we have the systems in place to enable this? Probably not. So I don't know what the ultimate outlook on that is, but you can kind of see over the next 4 years, the healthcare trajectory policy-wise is going to be rooted in those kind of themes, if that makes sense.
If there's anything we can learn from technology curves and growth based on either administrative actions or just market, technology being available, is that companies like Turquoise Health, right, appeared, at the result of executive actions or executive urging. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that it solves the big problems and technology companies spring up to actually do that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll mention, you bring up Turquoise, and they put out a little, state of transparency report, I think last year, not to plug them or anything, but I think economically it's really interesting as price transparency becomes more of a thing. And I'd be interested for y'all's perspective if you think this, but maybe like prices kind of homogenize over time, like regionally, kind of like converge to certain points. And I know there's other things that play into that, like, scale and density in markets and availability of assets, like types of specialties you have for hospitals and those sorts of things. But I do think they'll kind of like normalize over time.
How are you guys feeling about it? Is it coming up, or it's more just kind of wait and see?
Yeah, I think for us, the employer direct market and self-pay, price transparency is a growing part of our business. That's something we're starting to build out. Just thinking about the breadth of that marketplace and those patients coming to see us. So yeah, it's a new frontier for sure, but we're excited about it.
Open to the group. There's a lot of conversations around like how do you decipher, and we were talking about actually in the green room, Neil, whether or not we're talking about RPA, whether or not we're talking about true AI, whether or not we're talking about machine learning, the subset of AI, like how are you navigating both potential vendor or partner conversations as well as internal expectation setting around applying technology to fix or solve automation challenges?
I personally just throw all my thoughts and ideas out to anyone who will listen to me and then have them let me know which way we should be going. Is that AI? Is that RPA? I mean, I'm getting a little bit more intelligent on knowing the differences and where it can be applied and how it can be applied. But I just literally think of how any type of automation can help, and then get with the experts to say, oh, we could do that through API connections. We can do that through AI. We can do that through robotics. We can do that through, something different. So that's my approach, because I'm not an expert in, detecting which one we should use for my crazy thought that moment. But yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's, are they asking the right questions? Are they looking, are they setting up the data sets properly in terms of how they're going to work with us? And also, is there great communication between what they're trying to do and for them to understand what our business needs are so that they're really incorporating that into their long-term solution so that we know that we can both grow together versus them coming up with some narrow solution that doesn't help us down the road.
I just want to piggyback off that real quick, because one of the biggest benefits of some of the partners, Fathom, Adonis, we also partner with Cedar for patient collections and engagement, is having a partner that is not just knowledgeable in tech, but actually understands healthcare. Because bridging that gap, it's very difficult when you're trying to teach the tech partner healthcare workflows, outcomes, expectations, and then them delivering in a quick manner what you need from the tech side. So we've been very fortunate and, bridging that gap because the knowledge is already there from the revenue cycle perspective, medical revenue cycle, with the partners that we've partnered with. And that's driven us faster to resolutions and outcomes.
Feels kind of ironic, like in healthcare, it always comes back to like the person and the people you're working with. And so that's what I've seen across like the industry is, will they be a true partner, and will they work with you, and do they know healthcare? Or, are they just there to sell tech and be a vendor?
Right.
Yeah, I think there's like the vendors that offer, an out of the box solution that's just like, this is, the way you need to do it. And then there's like, here's customization and let me get in and understand your workflows and your processes. And I think that, with us at least, the way we do things might not be the best, but having vendors that at least start from that lens and then work us into something that's more efficient and help us think through that is something that I'm always looking for in a vendor.
Thanks, guys. So now's the time. We'll open it up to the crowd, to the audience. Like, does anybody have any questions for the panelists up here? I think we have 10 minutes left, Dan, 5 or 10 minutes.
What is the RCM automation that you can't find or you don't have that you want?
Future state or current state?
Both.
And we're working on it, but it's not defined yet or developed. Understanding payment behavior in a very accurate and articulate way. So one of the biggest things, we go through financials every month and we review last month's financials year over year, month over month. And the question that I always get when a particular contract is performing lower in this particular review, why? Who's not paying? What happened? And to try to peel that onion just through manual review is near impossible in a timely manner. It could be next month's financials review by the time I figure out, oh, Blue Cross stopped paying us on our fives 6 months ago or 3 months ago, or they started paying us at 50%, or there's a, so we're working on that. We don't have that yet, but that would definitely be something that would be extremely beneficial to the oversight of the revenue.
What I would throw in there is the notion of having some sort of composite insurance portal. So whenever we're accessing the patient portal to get data about patients, it's not complete. And then we have to call and kind of stitch it together. So having a database where everything in that database was accurate, up to date, and we could work off that information, some sort of like simulated insurance portal would be awesome.
At Adonis, we often talk about how we can deliver kind of magical value for our customers. If you guys all remember when ChatGPT first came out, it was kind of like magic for a lot of people that were out there that haven't really been experienced with AI or had any prior knowledge about it. I'm kind of curious from your sense, and please let your imagination run wild here. What would magic look like to you in an RCM space, and maybe kind of slightly related to what Tom just asked? And think about like specific problem or just general RCM automation or the RCM space.
I'm going to go back to the payments. We have a specific case that just happened recently. Aetna started auto downcoding our claims in July of 2024, and we only just identified it recently, say in January. We just recently identified that this was going on for 6 months. And they are auto downcoding approximately 2,300 to 2,500 claims a month. So each of those require reconsiderations and appeals. What would be magical is if as soon as it occurred, a big red light came on and said, hey, Tennille, they're downcoding your claims at Aetna on these remits, on these claims, so that we could have been not ahead of it, but right behind it as it occurred, instead of trying to catch up in month 6. And your timely filing for reconsiderations is 180 days. So we had to scramble very quickly to get those first set of claims reconned.
The same thing happened to us. If there was a way to help pull the charts that they're requesting and all the supporting information that they want for us to counter those that downcoding, that would be magical.
I think for me too, it's identifying the trends early, like we've talked about, but it's also how do we get that communication if it is like a provider related issue, getting that information to the provider in like a concise and clear way so that they can change their behavior, and then how can we hold them accountable to actually change their behavior. I don't quite know how AI and technology can help us there, but it's worth pondering about, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, Blake, you're talking to both payers and providers. So is the other side saying the same thing?
Well, I'll say something, I'll go kind of pie in the sky here, but something magical that I've seen. Some of y'all might have seen it on X, or I like to call it Twitter still. But like 2 agents realized, AI agents, of course, my favorite topic, were talking to each other, and they realized they were talking to each other and like switched to a more efficient language like that they only could understand and like do in like, a minute versus 20. Yeah. So just things like that. I think like solving for bottlenecks is a very, very, very cool application.
I have a question for this whole group. So we're talking about how payers have already adopted AI, and that's how they're pretty much, making our lives very, very difficult. And now we're talking about using AI to counter that behavior. But we've learned that at some carriers like Medicare, Medicare literally shut us down from the portal because we were using AI technology to get eligibility. So then we had to become smarter, and we had to create more bots, and have different logins so that we could trick Medicare and CMS. So what are we thinking in the future if the carriers then decide to block us from all of the AI usage for all the use cases that we're trying to build the AI for? Because I like to think about the solutions, but then what can happen that's going to negate all the work? Like, how are we going to get ahead of that? Just to think about that, because eventually they're going to get smart too, and they're going to go, oh, wow, they're resolving a lot more claims, that we're paying a lot more money out faster. How do we stop this from their side? So we're going to bump heads at some point. So is anybody else thinking about that, or?
That's a hard question. I can speak up. I come from a company called Steady. We work with Adonis as well. We're trying to build a new clearinghouse, doing our best. It's a bit tricky. But there's fundamentally, like, we hear all this talk of AI, but fundamentally the problem is that the integration methods with these payers, like, the data exists somewhere, right? But the payer systems are not built in a way to just make that easy. So going to CMS, you don't have the MBI or an emergency medicine, right? And so people come in, there's an emergency, they don't have their MBI, maybe they have their social security number, they have Medicare, they're over 65 or they're on disability, and all of a sudden you can't figure out that they actually have Medicare, maybe it's inactive or something like that. And fundamentally, the way that these payer systems are set up for eligibility and benefits information is you're basically fighting that process with AI and trying to get around it, because fundamentally payers should just fix their shit. And they should just fix their systems. And so we're trying to build up the provider side so we can aggregate enough volume to then go to payers and say, look, we understand what good behavior looks like from the payer side, and we know what bad looks like. And how do we actually build solutions for payers to be able to fix their shit? Because fundamentally, they have all that information. It's knowable. That's why you're calling someone in order to get that information, when you should be able to extract all of this programmatically. And so, we're not focused on AI. There's a lot of companies trying to get around those problems, but I think that's, like, really fundamentally the problem. And everybody's like, is it even possible? And that's the question.
You're going to the root cause, right?
Yeah.
Which is the best solution to anything. But that would be very interesting to see if you can get there.
Yeah, one idea maybe that I could throw out there is, I think if you have a fee-for-service model, the better you are at denying paying for things, the more money you make, right? There's an incentive to do that. As we move to value-based care, where you want people to get services and then the financial incentives are aligned with the clinical incentives, I think there's going to be a lot of motivation to make sure that they are paying for that essential clinical care that's going to help decrease the overall cost of managing that life. So I think that might be, that shift might help change the incentives.
There's a lot of regulation. So patient advocacy is getting really active around this unfortunate incident with United, which kind of triggered a lot of things. But 11 states just passed, right, including California and Texas, where insurance companies cannot use AI without certain things. They have to now become transparent, et cetera. So I think that is a big trigger, that patients now understanding because what happens when patient calls us, their insurance company says, talk to the doctor. They talk to us. They're like, we didn't do it. Your insurance company did it, and they are getting stuck in the middle. So that's could be a big driver of change, which I'm seeing already, 11 states. I was so surprised at how fast people are moving, passing regulations.
Zap, are you guys talking about that at Allied, actively with your acquisition strategies?
In terms of?
Just the upcoming regulations and how it's trying to level the playing field, or at least hold back the payer's ability to continue denying.
We are going directly to the payers to level. Yesterday, I was with Emblem's chief strategy officer and saying listen, we are in network and there are bad players out there. I'm not denying that. Level the playing field. Why are you allowing for out of network for certain things like anesthesia, which is, hurting us from an acquisition strategy from others, because we're not going to touch an out of network player and we can't create value. So you are losing out at the end, which Emblem obviously now the mayor is in trouble, so they are fine. But but I'm just saying, like, there are, you have to have direct conversations with the insurance companies and say, like, we want to play with you, because we are, like, the large groups are the last bastions against health systems, right? Because the health systems have become so large, and the super groups as such are the controlling mechanism. So if they can't survive, we will sell.
I'm getting the wrap signal. So that's a wrap. Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Tennille. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Jack, for lending your time.